Today, the Justice Department snubbed a federal judge by refusing to answer his questions. The federal judge had demanded more information on the deportation flights ordered by the Trump administration. 3 days ago on Saturday, Judge James Boasberg blocked all deportation flights stemming from President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Despite the judge's order, 3 flights departed the United States carrying suspected gang members. The planes arrived in El Salvador, and the deportees were handed over to law enforcement. Overnight, the Justice Department asked Judge Boasberg to reverse its decision. DOJ calls the judge's order an affront to the president's broad constitutional authority. Then this morning, it was President Trump's turn. He took to Truth Social, lashing out the federal judge. His post reads in part, "This radical left lunatic of a judge, a troublemaker and agitator who was sadly appointed by Barack Hussein Obama, was not elected president. This judge, like many of the crooked judges I am forced to appear before, should be impeached." Now, that post quickly drew a rare public rebuke from the Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. He issued this statement. "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose." Now, more than 250 Venezuelans were deported on those weekend flights. Hundreds are believed to be members of the Tren de Aragua gang. Nearly 24 are connected to MS-13. All will be detained at a terrorism confinement center in El Salvador for at least 1 year. We're getting more about Tren de Aragua and its violence. Our border correspondent Jaeson Jones interviewed acting DEA Administrator Derek Waltz. Jaeson?
Oh, Greta, it's good to be with you. And I interviewed him yesterday in Houston, Texas. And I want you to listen to it because we had a great interview, but also a very candid interview about what was really taking place there versus the stories the American people were told. Listen to what he had to say. Administrator, Americans are waking up every day realizing that it seems like Tren de Aragua in Colorado seems to be ground zero for this terrorist organization operating domestically. Can you talk a little bit about that and what DEA is seeing?
So Tren de Aragua is a very violent gang, came from the prisons in Venezuela. I've learned about these gangs over the last couple of years, but I learned the most from being out on the front lines with my office out in Colorado, the Rocky Mountain Field Division, because they're the ones working with a whole bunch of partners out there in the streets that took down a very violent group of Tren de Aragua when they took over the apartment complex out there. What I learned, Jason, really is mind-boggling. They extorted everybody that lived in that apartment complex, and instead of paying the landlord the rent, they were paying international illegal gangs. And then they took over the building. It was crazy. Now I went out there last week. All these buildings are boarded up. All these poor citizens in that community of Aurora, Colorado. How can you live in that type of environment? Yeah. And how can the politicians accept that the citizens of that county, that city, had to deal with those illegal, violent criminals? Now, remember, where I first started learning about that gang was watching them rip pocketbooks off the necks of elderly women in New York City as they were doing all the moped crime. Yeah. And to see them growing in America is unacceptable. But I believe now the president has made it clear they are now designated as foreign terrorist organizations. U.S. law enforcement, the intelligence community, Department of Defense, we're operating together, and we're going to get rid of them together. As I said, in Colorado, they should start looking for another state, but now I'm going to say they should get the hell out of here and go back to another country. And I have to applaud the efforts of the president of El Salvador. He just accepted about 238, and now they're in terror prisons in El Salvador. And guess what? They're not going to be committing any type of crime anytime soon. So thumbs up to the president of El Salvador.
I think this is fascinating. You know, there was a lot of back and forth from politicians that live in Colorado that, no, this really wasn't happening. Tren de Aragua was not controlling certain areas, but that's not what you're saying. You've seen where the citizens of this country were absolutely having to pay their rent even to these terrorists.
Yeah. I mean, they were terrified. They couldn't even come out of their apartments. And so, to me, for all those politicians, now there's lawsuits out there because, you know, the landlord's suing the city, and the city's still in denial, apparently. Well, guess what? It's reality, and it's not just Colorado. They have Tren de Aragua in Texas. They have Tren de Aragua in Chicago. They have them out in L.A. They're all over the place, but they're going to be back home soon. because this president cares about national security and public safety.
Greta, can you remember a time in your lifetime where an illegal alien who's a part of an international gang was allowed to come into this country and extort Americans and also migrants here? This is what was really taking place. And if that wasn't enough, then we were being lied to by most of the national media and the local politicians in that area. Now we know what really took place. Back to you.
Jaeson Jones, thank you very much.
Great to be with you.